Start. So that was the long range proficiency test. I forgot the bipod. Perfect for elevation, but rather marginal on the wind call. This is not a show off, I just forgot the bipod. Part of this test is that you do the test regardless of the conditions, that be the weather or the equipment. This time I forgot the bipod, lesson learned, and I have to use the terrain instead. And as you see, it's not really a big problem shooting from the terrain. It's just like shooting over the backpack. You use what the rest is available, and it's exactly the same marksmanship principle. Line up on target as much as you can, get straight behind the rifle, hold it the same way, breathe and trigger control. The biggest difference is that I tend to start on a much lower magnification when I'm shooting. Lowest magnification here is 2.5, 3, and that's more or less useless because it's so low that you can't really make up the details. Without really knowing, I would say I was somewhere around 5, 6, 7 when I opened the caps. Other differences since the last time is that I've updated the Leica turret, and you can have a look at my Instagram as well, and I've shown a few pictures on how I did it there. From the factory, it's not very good. Now, as a hunter, you should expect to use this turret in twilight, meaning less light, and you can't really have a white blur on the turret. You need distinct numbers and you need distinct markers so you can dial in precisely. So not only did I forget my bipod, but I forgot to bring the binoculars into position. If I had needed a backup shot, it would have been quite a few seconds extra to get back, fetch the binoculars, get a new range if that was needed, and getting the second shot in. Normally I wouldn't do that, I would just eyeball it at an approximate distance from the last position, and I would just aim shorter, if it's meaning lower if it's closer to me, or a little bit higher if it's farther away. Okay, let's go down to the 100 and switch to the 22LR trainer.
This episode contains sponsored items. Before you go, subscribe, like, and comment. Click the bell if you want notifications of new episodes.
Start. So that felt a little too easy, but it would be meaningless to shoot this test at 100. A little bit of wind and I would be nowhere near the target. But managed to train getting into position, acquiring the target, adjusting the scope, and executing a good enough trigger pull. Now, some of you are familiar with this target. I'm no longer shooting a 1 MOA target, but as you can see on the grid here, the values double. So the 1 MOA target at a 50 will measure 2. So I think we will have to recalibrate that target and make a paper version for the THLR at 50 meters. Because this was a little too easy. But the success criteria for the trainer remains the same. You need something that's fairly similar. Grip, trigger and sight. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but ish in the same feature set. Get into position, shoot the center target, and depending on your performance, you switch to whatever row you are comfortable with shooting. Based on today's performance, I think I'm going to switch to the 1 MOA target. And the reason why it's gray is to lower the contrast, and it also has odd shapes. That is because I want you to really look and really aim. That's 5 shots, and the next 5 shots after that would be 1 row lower. So you're continuously pushing yourself into better performance, or towards better performance. So this here is a proper exercise for a THLR trainer. As you can see, the targets I've been shooting at is approximately the same size as the bullet. Your position has to be excellent. You really need a natural point of aim. You have to breathe properly, you have to aim properly, and you have to pull the trigger without any errors. And because the shape of this rifle is more or less the same as the centerfire, that part of the mechanics will transfer extremely well. So for me, this was a really nice training session with high transfer value for when I'm going to shoot with my centerfire. So this is also one of the more useful parts of the tutu trainer. You're going to do a lot of mistakes in position work, and you're not going to waste too much money doing it. So now I'm just practicing the transition, learning how to track the target with your eyes, get the rifle on properly, and have a flawless transition. It's quite significant for a hunter. And you know, in the beginning there's going to be quite a lot of basic things you need to practice. You know, just lining up your position with a natural point of aim at the target, handling the rifle properly, and making the transition from eyes to sight picture in a sensible manner. So I don't really see the point of doing that with recoil. So this is also one of the more significant training feature of the THLR trainer. You can do high volume without going bankrupt. So this training session here was around 15 to 20 euro, and you can compare that to anything from 200 to 250 with the centerfire. So I'm not sure where we're going to end up cost-wise, although it is cheaper to shoot a THLR. I'm also putting in a lot more volume. But it also makes me willing to do more position work and, you know, goof around, have quite a lot of misses, because it's not going to have any sort of real financial impact to shoot a couple of misses. Okay, so I think we'll call it a day. Over the last 2 episodes, I've shown you enough exercises for you to get value out of your THLR trainer. And if you do decide to get a trainer rifle, one of the points I want to stress is make sure the overall shape of the rifle makes sense compared to what you are shooting for a centerfire. To have a toy gun and a proper gun, there's not that much training value in the transfer. I'm not too worried about the differences in action, as long as the grip is similar and the trigger is good enough so you can actually get a response on your trigger pull. Okay, I think that's enough for today. I'm just going to shoot another 50 shots and I'll pack up, but there are no more lessons for you today.
Subscribe to the THLR channel by clicking the left logo icon, so you'll be shooting straighter than a drunk skunk before the sun shines over northern Norway.